Welcome members, Leon, Joanne, Diane, choir, ushers. Welcome all the people who pay for and make things run at North Chapel. Thank you all for the blessing of your presence here today, and at home on YouTube. A few announcements. Leon is back. Reverend Dr. Leon Dunkley returned from his sabbatical for the service last week, and we have his reflection today and again next week. And he looks forward to talking with you, so see the announcements in the order of service for details and schedule some one-on-one time with him. He'd love to talk to you. And as far as coffee and conversation today, please join us after the service for coffee downstairs in the social hall. For the month of April, the Social Justice Committee has been responsible for coffee hour. Be sure to introduce yourself and learn about their activities. We are warming up homemade lasagna that Leon invited me to prepare with him this week. And you know it always tastes best when it's reheated. There is not much that is better than cooking together, so we hope we can have you join us to do this in the future. Get to know each other. Next Sunday, May 5th, the Welcoming Engagement and Membership Committee invites new members to get together after the service in the parlor for the chat with the minister. This is an opportunity for casual conversation with Leon. And please RSVP to Sherry Belial so we can get a head count for the food. Sherry, could you raise your hand so people can see we are there? Sherry. Open my heart, let holy love flow through it. Center my soul upon the path of peace. Make of my life a melody of love, singing Alleluia, the great one, Alleluia. This is an auspicious occasion. I first heard these words as a young man when on a whim I attended a performance by Pandit Prannath, a national treasure of India renowned for his classical singing, accompanied by the familiar drone of the tambura. This is an auspicious occasion. This was one touch point of opening in my lifetime. Even before he sang a note, my mind was blown by this sincere greeting. So memorable. This is how we recreate the sacred. North Chapel is a safe and welcoming place with loving and tolerant people. We meet you where you are. May this service be respite for those who are suffering today, and a celebration of life for all of us. A few years later, college friends invited me to a satsang at the Siddha Yoga Ashram of Ann Arbor, Michigan. And we were given a collection of Sanskrit chants, which we sang for over an hour. We were informed that the Sanskrit syllables are sacred and that we didn't need to know what they meant. I remember at the time that it felt a bit creepy to sing prayers in a language I did not understand, especially if the syllables were magical. Many years later, I learned that these were prayers of gratitude to the Guru and the deities, similar to Hebrew, Latin, Arabic, and other prayers chanted in faiths, including the chosen hymns of our own religion. Many years later, I made chanting at satsang at the Manhattan Ashram a regular part of my spiritual practice for as long as I could keep the midweek schedule.
Brevity, brevity. Brevity is the soul of wit. Good morning and good Sunday. I hope that this new day finds you well. The words about brevity come from Shakespeare's Hamlet and are not in themselves funny. They are funny in context, but not on their own. They are spoken by a man named Polonius. Polonius is not well remembered in the play, but he does speak some of its most remembered lines. The brevity line is one of them, but not the most remembered one, I don't think. I think that the most well-remembered one that Polonius speaks is, "To thine own self be true." To his son, Laertes, who is having trouble getting on in life, who is having trouble choosing his direction in young adulthood, Polonius says, "Laertes, aboard, like, get out of my house. For shame, the wind sits in the shoulder of your sails, and yet you are stayed for. There my blessings with thee, and with thee a few precepts, see thou character." He gives him some advice. Give thy thoughts no tongue, nor any unapportioned thought. Be thou familiar, but by no means vulgar. And the most powerful and most remembered one, to thine own, neither a borrower nor a lender be. He also said that. And to thine own self be true. Polonius was a self-centered, sort of pretentious man. He was eager, anxious, and anxious to impress people with power and people with wealth and people with fame. He was loquacious. He talked a lot, although he didn't have that much to say. So Shakespeare giving him the brevity line is kind of ironic because, try as he may, pitiful, piteous Polonius simply could not be brief, which is actually rather funny when you think about it. Brevity really is the soul of wit. I do believe that. I think that that's true. We like being quickly delighted. Does that happen often with you? Are you quickly delighted? Are you fast with a smile in this world in which we live? Helen, who is featured on the cover of your orders of service. Helen is a friend of mine who lives in New Orleans, Louisiana. She's a cellist extraordinaire. I'm hoping that she will come and play for us sometime. Her music is really something not to be missed. What I really love about Helen is the quickness of her delight, the fastness to laughter, her ready smile. Outside of the Small Mart coffee shop at the corner of Chartres and Port, I ran into her. I was playing music and drinking coffee that morning, which is what I did quite often down there. And Helen walked up with her orange coat and her big old smile and sat down with a friend in conversation not far away. We said hello. I met her friend, and then they went into their conversation, and I continued drinking my coffee and practicing. I was playing a song that I love by Huddie Ledbetter called "Good Night, Irene." When their conversation was over, the conversation that seemed quite playful and fun, Helen came over to where I was to check in with me. Before she said anything, she noticed that I had finished my latte, and that delighted her. She wasn't delighted because I had finished my coffee. She was delighted because of the little heart that she saw at the bottom of my coffee cup. Now you may know this, but fancy baristas pour little designs with the foamy cream into fancy coffees, so that the top of your coffee has a little art on it. I have an absolute weakness for this process. I'm not even that much of a coffee fan, but I love the little designs on the top of the coffee. They pour plant life and trees and chalices, or what look like chalices to me. And of course, they pour little hearts as well. Charlotte poured the good heart for me on that morning, and I have become masterful at drinking coffee from beneath the foam without disturbing the design. It's a habit. I'm not really conscious of it. I don't even know when that started, and I didn't even know I had done that until Helen came up and expressed her great delight when she saw the heart at the bottom of my coffee cup. I snapped a picture of her face. She smiled for quite some time. I was able to reach for my phone, and she just was like, look, oh my God. I snapped a picture of her face as she noticed, and she laughed out loud, and immediately there was no wind-up, there was no runway, not a moment's hesitation, just smiles and laughter, 0 to 60 in less than a second. Brevity truly is the soul of wit, I thought. How ready is your laughter? How freely do you share it? In what context? What setting? What set of preconditions do you feel comfortable giving your smile freely? Is there anything that stands in your way? Charlotte had been the barista that day, a young woman, affable, pretty, self-possessed, smart, talented. She was the drummer in a punk rock band that had toured internationally, but she would never tell you that. When I purchased coffee that morning, guitar in hand, she said, I think I saw you yesterday. In the park with your bass? I play upright bass these days. I smiled. I liked that she had seen that moment. I was crying, Charlotte. I was crying and I was playing, I said. After the coffee grinder had finished doing its thing, she said, you like whole milk, right? I said yes, and we exchanged smiles. Milk choice is like the love language of the barista crowd. So she said, why were you crying? And I told her I was struck by where she was, and she smiled. She knew exactly what I meant, and she poured the heart into my coffee. Small Mart, the coffee shop, is at the corner of Chartres and Port. It's 3 blocks away from Royal and Old Press Street. And it's near a historical marker that reads Plessy v. Ferguson, Press Street Roadway Yards. On June 7th of 1892, Homer Adolph Plessy was removed from the East Louisiana Railroad train and arrested by Detective C.C. Kane at the corner of Royal and Press Street. He was charged with violating the 1890 Louisiana Separate Car Act that separated the railroad passengers by race. Plessy's act of civil disobedience was the test case organized by the Citizens Committee, whose aim was to overturn the segregation laws that were being enacted across the South. The philosophy and the strategies of the committee foreshadowed the civil rights movement of the 20th century. What happened at the corner of Royal and Old Press Street, which has since been renamed as Homer Plessy Street. What happened at the corner of Royal and Press Street was taken up in the Supreme Court back in 1896. That separate but equal ruling remained the law of the land for almost 60 years until it was overturned by the Brown versus Board of Education decision in 1954 in the Warren Court. I had taken my bass there to play and to pray. I took my guitar there and did the same thing on different days. And tears just fell from my eyes. I can't tell you why. It just occurs that we hurt one another so deeply sometimes by the systems that we create. Strange thing though, and this is the cool part of the story, is that those tears inspired joyful smiles, the joyful smiles that we exchanged that morning. That great sorrow seemed to inspire a world-traveling punk rock drummer to pour a little heart into my coffee cup. And Helen saw it. All of the normal fences that we hold came down in that moment, and we recognized each other. It was as if until that moment we had been running blind. An artist writes, somewhere defined in aimless words, and somewhere within my angry herd of stampeding emotions, love was running blind. I read my way through these scattered pieces and gathered up all my trampled feelings, and I built up my fences strong so I could hide. Michael Hedges is the artist. He captured that experience so well. He writes, the dazzling circles slow too soon, dancing to some forgotten tune, we weave in the sky a pattern that I can trace, fading to taste the afterglow as pure as the song you sing so low, and your senses come down to meet me face to face. This is part of the poetry that defines us. With just a little bit of luck, the fences come down. The senses see and taste and smell and hear and feel again, as if for the first time, in the quickness of a smile, in the readiness of our laughter. How ready is your laughter? How freely do you share it? What context, what setting, what preconditions do you need in order to give your smile freely? Is there anything that's in your way? I went to a Seder at Shir Shalom this past week. A Seder is a Jewish ritual service and ceremonial dinner for the first night or the first 2 nights of Passover. It's a lovely celebration. I was seated near the lectern in the front of the room. Rabbi Eileen and her husband Nick were seated to my right. Father Michael Augustinowitz from Our Lady of the Snows right here in Woodstock was seated to my left. We had a lovely time going through the ritual, singing and drinking wine and grape juice and eating together and throwing frogs at each other, which is a whole different story. I contributed a yummy salad on behalf of North Chapel, and we prayed together in peace, Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, which means praise. We praise you, eternal God, sovereign of the universe, who makes us holy and commands us to kindle the Sabbath lights. We are going through such a difficult time right now, most challenging with the wars overseas. I do not have faith in political leadership that is weighted down by the trappings of righteousness and shame. I believe in the readiness of laughter. I believe in the soul of wit. I believe in walking out up into the open depths of our own soul in grace and in gratitude. I believe in the experience of delight as it shows up in a moment's burst. We are divided right now, and there's good reason for this division, but in the end, it is not worthy of us. Division is not worthy of us, not worthy of our inmost and sacred hope, not worthy of the faith that we proclaim. In what is perhaps my favorite prayer by Henry David Thoreau, he writes, "I went to the woods because I wished to live deliberately, to front only the essential facts of life and to see if I could not learn what it had to teach, and not when I came to die, discover that I had not lived." He wrote, "I wanted to live deep and suck out all the marrow of life, to live so sturdily and Spartan-like as to put to rout all that was not life, to drive life into the corner and to reduce it to its lowest terms. Wit is not a form of entertainment. It is not synonymous with comedy in the naive sense. Wit is mental sharpness. Wit is keen intelligence. Wit is the natural aptitude for using words and ideas in quick and inventive ways to create humor. Humor without sharpness, without intelligence, without inventiveness isn't really very funny at all. How do we learn to laugh together again? Enjoy one another's company, despite our differences. Is it possible to imagine this, given the state of our world right now? I would like to think that it is possible. I believe that it is possible. Not without honesty and courage and real forgiveness, but I do believe that it's possible if we're smart and if we start joyfully and if we start by laughing at ourselves and with ourselves. In closing, I'll say Jimmy Kimmel, you know Jimmy Kimmel, the late night talk show host? Jimmy Kimmel did a wonderful thing a while ago. It was a live interaction skit that he called Debate and Switch. Okay. He sent a colleague to Charleston, South Carolina on the day of the Republican primary. And he filmed a series of exit interviews to explore how people were feeling about their presidential candidates. The interviewer asked Do you mind if I ask you who you voted for in the last election? The person that she was talking to was wearing a hat that said Trump across the front. She said, I'm going to guess that you voted for Trump. Do you mind if I ask you a few questions about the things that Biden has done in his administration, and you can kind of give me your opinion on that? And the voter agreed. The interviewer said, what did you think when Joe Biden said that COVID could be cured by shining bright light against the inside of a body? And the voter laughed and said, it's very sad that Joe Biden is clearly a dementia patient. And the interviewer said, what did you think when Joe Biden said that getting through the 80s without getting HIV was his own personal Vietnam? The voter again laughed and responded, again, it's very sad that his mental capacity, this is a very uneducated statement. At this point, the interviewer apologizes, admitting to making a mistake, and says, oh, I'm so sorry, I got my notes mixed up. Can we start over? And the voter agrees. And the interview begins again, this time for real. What did you think when Donald Trump suggested that COVID could be cured by shining a bright light into the body? There was laughter in the studio audience, but the laughter in the studio audience had little to do with the soul of wit. The voter responded that she said, it depends on what the technology is. That's a broad spectrum because you have MRI machines and CT machines and infrared and different things. So it depends on the context of all of that. And the interviewer continued and said, what did you think when Donald Trump said that getting through the 80s without getting HIV was his own personal Vietnam? The voter was slow to respond, didn't know what to say. So the interviewer prompted her and said, dementia patient? And the voter said, no, I don't believe that. There were two other interviews that I won't relate to you this morning. But we can choose to laugh at her if we want to. We can throw her under the joke box, but I don't think that does any of us any good. Alternatively, we could love on her so beautifully and love on ourselves. We could connect with her so beautifully and reconnect with one another. We could love on her for the quickness of her delight, her fastness to laughter, and the southern readiness of her smile. Are our souls that big? Are our hearts that welcoming? Do we have the requisite humility? If we look for it, we may find it. If we don't even look, well, that's not even funny. The least funny person I know is an alien. He comes from outer space, from a planet called Vulcan. His name is Spock. Do you remember Star Trek? One day, disillusioned by the shortcomings of his own logic, Spock had a conversation with his captain, James T. Kirk. Spock asked, is it possible that we two, you and I, have grown so old and so inflexible that we have outlived our usefulness? Would that constitute a joke? It's a fabulous film, especially if you're as nerdy about Star Trek as I am. And if you're interested in seeing it, please come and see me in coffee hour and we can arrange a time. Or several times. Ironically, the film quotes Hamlet more often than this reflection was. The question is this, though. If Thoreau was right, if we are to drive life into the corner and to reduce it to its lowest terms, will we still find the humor in it? I think that the answer depends on us. I think that the answer depends on the sharpness, the intelligence, and the inventiveness of our wit. I think that the answer depends on the soul of brevity. I think it depends on how lovingly we are and choose to be. What do you think? It's a real question. Do we have hearts big enough to open to one another again, in spite of, or even because of, the challenges we face? It's a real question. Students are protesting on campuses right now. There's a major conversation going on. Let's get in it, soulfully, with the soul of wit. For brief are our days, and we should live joyfully. And that's no joke. I really mean it. Maybe so. Blessed be, and amen.